everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Juan Londoño, and today's topic is finding our photography style without actually looking for it. Let me tell you that for those of you that have been on this channel before and have seen my work, this sounds like it might be a Photo Philosophy Friday topic. So I have two types of topics. Some are more photography oriented, less mental, and then others tend to be a little more mental, and those are the Photo Philosophy Friday topics. This one is kind of borderline, and you'll see why. Before we go any further, let me clarify for those of you that are wondering what photography styles is he talking about. Is he talking about landscape versus portraits? Maybe, but that's not really what I was thinking about. I mean, you could go that route. I was thinking, for example, the person who just loves to do portraits, doing portraits of their friends, doing portraits of their family, and they see other photographers that they admire, for example, on Instagram or wherever, it doesn't really matter. And they see that these photographers have a certain style. Either their portraits tend to be dark, or their portraits tend to be very even lit, or their portraits tend to be very shadowy, or this particular photographer focuses on black and white versus color, focusing on textures and stuff like that. Or a photographer can be a headshot photographer and really close up, or some tend to shoot the body and a lot of the surroundings as well in their portraits. So that's what I mean. I'm talking about, you obviously like a particular field of photography. You could be out doing street photography all the time, and after a while doing it, you start to ask yourself, is there a style developing here? I don't know. Is there something that I like more than something else? I see that other photographers have a particular style. I'm not sure that I do. That's really the style I'm answering here. The other broad style term that we were talking about, headshots versus, portraits versus street photography versus weddings, that tends to happen quicker. You kind of find that on your own just because you gravitate towards that type of photography a lot quicker. Finding that subtle style, that sub-style, if you will, the top one I consider like a genre of photography, weddings, portraits, landscapes. But within those are the styles, and that's what I'm referring to here. And that's that subcategory, right? If you're doing landscapes, are you doing, telephoto landscapes or wide-angle landscapes? Are you doing landscapes with animals, or are there no animals? Are you doing black and white landscapes? Are you doing only landscapes where the skies are very dramatic like Ansel Adams used to do? To do this, we're going to look at two very popular phrases, and this is where this Photo Philosophy Friday comes in, because we typically look at quotes, and then we get lost in the deep end of the mind. But we're not going to do that here. We're going to use these two quotes just to understand how the mind works, and then we're going to apply that to photography and finding our style. The first phrase is that, you've heard this before, and it's probably happened to you. I tend to find things when I'm not looking for them. Doesn't that happen to you? I know it happens to me all the time. I'm looking for something. Hopefully it's not something really critical. It's something I thought about. And oh yeah, where is that? Like there is a pen right now that I haven't been able to find. And I look for it everywhere. One day I'm going to be looking in a box for something different, and this pen is going to surface, right? There's another phrase that kind of seems like the opposite of this. And that phrase goes something like this. I thought about buying this particular vehicle. And after I made the decision to go ahead and buy it, I started putting money away for it and looking at it in magazines and online. I started seeing this car everywhere. Like everywhere I look, this automobile is there. Both of these phrases or lines apply to our wonderful world of photography. Let's look into that. What is the difference between these two phrases? When you hear one and the other, they seem to contradict each other, right? So are they rubbish? Is this just something that people say for the sake of saying it? Well, typically there's a little truth when people say things over and over, like generation after generation, and from one culture to the next, and you see those comments coming. There's got to be a little truth to that, right? The biggest difference between both of these is that one of these talks about seeing, while the other one talks about thinking. With one of these phrases, you only tend to see things when you're not looking for them. In the other phrase, you tend to see things more the more you think about them. Interesting, right? You'll find that these are really not opposite. They actually complement each other. Let's look a little further. With that car, for example, you set your mind on buying that car and you see it everywhere. You're not really looking for it, right? You're not consciously looking for it. You don't go into the street saying, I'm going to look for this car I'm buying. You just think about it all the time. You think about it when you're home. You think about it at work. And wouldn't you know it, when you hit the street, it's everywhere. No matter where you look, this car pops up. In a way, this phrase already has the other one inherently in it, which says you see things when you're not looking for them, right? Because what we're doing is we're not looking for them. We're thinking about this car and we see it everywhere. If we were actually looking for it, we'd probably get lost in the city in a wave of cars and it'd be harder to find. But it's interesting how the mind works. In the case of the automobile, you'll even sit back on a lazy Sunday morning or afternoon and you can smell the new leather or the seats, or however you plan on buying it, the vinyl, whatever it is. You kind of can feel certain textures of the stick shift if you're buying a standard transmission. All these things, you kind of imagine the details of them. You might even see yourself driving the car, right? Whether it's down the road driving it or inside the car driving it. Those that are into music may imagine the stereo and being in the car listening to that awesome stereo system. However, with our keys, for example, the thing we're looking for, or our phone, we're not thinking about them all the time. We're not craving them in any way. We're just looking for them. They're lost and we're looking for them. And this is what happens. Many times we're in a rush. There are people waiting in the car and we can't, or waiting outside to get in the car. We're inside. We can't find the freaking car key so we can get out of here. So now there's an element of, anticipation, rush, right? You start feeling despair and anxiety, and that just fogs the mind even more. It makes it even more cloudy. So it makes it even harder to see these keys that you may have overlooked 3 times because they're right by this little piece of paper kind of hidden underneath, but they're sticking out and you can't see them because you're fogged, right? You're looking for the entire keychain. You're not looking for a tip of the key or a tip of the keychain, whatever you have, or, ornament hanging from them, whatever. I hope you see the 2 comparisons, right? Because we're done with that part, right? Bringing in those 2 statements and looking at how the mind works, because now we're going to dive into photography and see how we can find our style. Photography styles work pretty much the same way. When we go looking for a photography style, it's like looking for our keys. We start feeling, despair because everybody has a style, we don't, and you go looking for your style, and it's just going to cloud us even more, and you're going to get frustrated, and we end up not finding our style. It may come, it may not, just like when you're looking for those keys. You may find them in 1 minute, you may find them in 15 minutes. The truth is, we're going to end up finding it when we least expect it. All this kind of gets summarized with a little phrase that I'm thinking of here, which is that the power of the mind is much stronger than the power of our senses. And people that study things like yoga will tell you this, right? People that study martial arts for many years will tell you this. They even train many of their techniques blindfolded because many times the eyes will impair their training. Because once you rely on the eyes, it starts slowing you down. When the eyes are out of the picture, you're training with your senses, and your mind, the power of the mind, is just much more powerful. So how do we use this to find our photography style? How do we use the power of our mind and kind of keep our eyes out of the picture? Well, we do it by not looking for a photography style. We do it by understanding what styles there are, and we start envisioning or thinking of these photography styles. So are there methods that I can use to find my photography style if I was looking for one? Is there an actual method? Well, we wouldn't be discussing this video if I didn't think there was. So I believe there is. And it may not suit everybody, but we're going to cover the method, and then we're going to cover another way of doing it without the method. Either way, if you decide to try this method, please leave some comments below. Let me know. It might be a year from now, but let me know if it's working, if it's something that worked. And then feel free to fine-tune it. When I give you the steps, feel free to fine-tune them, because remember, there are no rules that are ever fixed, right? Especially in something like a creative field, right? I always say this when I give you these rules or tips, or please take them with a grain of salt. Everybody is different. Keep in mind, I'm not telling you how or when to do things. It's just letting you know how I think so that you can apply it to yourself, okay? Before we go any further, it's water break time. For those of you that have not seen these videos, We pause for a water break. Please go get your water if you don't have it with you. If you have it with you, congrats. I'm going to take a sip. Okay, I hope you're back. So, step number 1, take it all in. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're starting out in photography, even if you've been doing it for a while, if there's a genre, that genre we started talking about, right, that this video doesn't really apply for looking for, because those happen kind of automatically. If there's a genre you already like say bridal photography, buy 3 or 4 magazines and then go to the library and you know, borrow a couple of books, or go to the store and even buy a book. Go online and look at pictures, right? You can search the internet. Do that for about 2 or 3 weeks. Do it on every break you get. Use these pictures as inspiration. Don't use them thinking that you're going to copy them one day. If you can cut them out, if these are magazines you purchased, I recommend that you purchase 3 or 4 magazines. Cut out the pictures that just really, that you look at and go, oh my gosh, how do I want to get there. I want to get to this point, right? Cut them out, put them in a folder. Do this for, like I said, 2, 3, 4 weeks, it doesn't matter. Just saturate your mind. There's a reason for doing this. You want to saturate your mind with all this imagery, and then you want to shut it. Put it away. Don't look at it again. Step number 2, very important step. Make sure you understand photography well, both the technical and the artistic or creative side, okay? Understand the rules, for example, of composition. Make sure you understand all of the rules of composition. Why? Because you're going to use them? Yeah, sometimes. But I really want you to understand what the rules are so you know when to break them. See, in photography, rules are meant to be broken. Unlike in real life or like driving, for example, you don't want to break the law, you know? Step number 3, shoot for a long time. Now, a long time is different for different people. It might be a year, it might be 2 years. I'm thinking when I say a long time, 2 to 3 years. But everybody's different, like I said. If you're really, really passionate and all you can think of is photography, it's probably going to happen a little quicker. If you have less time on your hands and you have other hobbies and interests and your job and your family, it may take you more like 3 years. That's okay. It doesn't matter. This is where I say fine-tune it to your needs and your taste, right? But shoot a lot, get out and do it with awareness, with mindfulness. Every time you're shooting, like I've talked in other videos, plan your shoots well, focus on what you're doing, pay attention to what you're doing. If you could do it without music, focus, right? Especially for these first couple of years when you're honing in your skills, you want to spend your time focusing. After you're done with a photo shoot, get home and categorize it, right? If you're like a street photographer and you love street photography, when you get home, try to put it in, you can either do it by dates, of course, but if you have a way of classifying your pictures, like, we'll talk about that in a minute, go ahead and classify them. Step number 4 is going to be really interesting. Remember I told you to put those pictures away and lock them up? After your second or third year, where you're starting to feel comfortable and you might even think you're finding a style, pull those pictures out again and start looking at them for 2 or 3 weeks again. Every time you get a break, have them with you. Look over them. Dwell on them. Pay attention to the details. Now, because you've been shooting for an extra 2 or 3 years, a lot of those pictures are going to make a lot more sense. You're going to look at a picture and you're going to go, oh, I can tell where they put the lights for this portrait, because now you look at it from a different angle. You're not just going, oh, how pretty this is. You've been shooting. You know in the back of your mind that you're looking for a style without really looking for a style. You know that you're eventually going to get to that point where you're going to find one. So now you look at these pictures and you start to see details. And there's a reason why this is important. If you were collecting, for example, street photography images, you want to now set aside categories and say, okay, what type of street photography? I've been shooting street photography for 2 or 3 years, and this applies to bridal, portraits, anything, right? I've been shooting street photography for 2 or 3 years. I'm really enjoying this. This is like my area, right? What kind of categories have I seen? Looking at the pictures and in the stuff that I'm dealing with, and then go ahead and put them aside in your mind, right? Create folders. Say, okay, there's street photography without people, and there's street photography with people, right? Where some of it is just like at 6:30 in the morning, 7 in the morning, there's nothing around. Others, it's congestion with lots of people. So I have those 2 categories. I'm seeing that there's a lot of street photography where it focuses on structures and architecture. Okay, that's a category. I'm seeing that there's street photography that focuses on a lot of shadows, the play of light and dark. Ooh, that's a category. There's another section of street photography that captures movement and blur. Ooh, there's another category. So you put all these folders aside, whether it's on your computer or in a file cabinet, wherever, and you start putting the pictures that you had seen before in them, right? And you start to form in your mind your own photography that you've been shooting for 2 or 3 years and what it's falling into. Which brings us to the fifth step and the final tip here. And it's when you're looking, we just touched on it right now. When you're looking at your photographs, start breaking them down into categories. Start taking your favorite images from every photo shoot for the past 2 or 3 years and putting them in, ooh, this is definitely light and dark. I'm playing with shadows here. Ooh, this is definitely image blur. Ooh, this is definitely, right? And then you look at those folders and ask yourself, is there one of these folders that has obviously more work than others? The results might surprise you. You'll be able to tell if your photography is leaning in one direction or the other, in one particular field or another. If by chance you do this and there isn't really anything that stands out, everything's kind of even, it may mean one of two things. You just like shooting, that particular subject genre like street photography and you enjoy all aspects of it. It might very well be. It might also be that you just haven't shot enough, and that's a reality, You take, I've been shooting for more than 30 years. And it's a harsh number, I know. It says a lot about how old I am. But, don't pressure yourself. Back to looking for those keys in that phone. Don't pressure yourself. If it takes another 2 years, it takes another 2 years. You're enjoying yourself anyway. Why not? Just have a good time. Now, here's a problem that might surface. If you stop at step 2, step 1 was take it all in, and step 2 was understand photography really well. If you stop there and you say, okay, I'm just going to look for my style, it's kind of like chasing your own tail if you were a dog. It's like looking for that phone or those keys. You may find it, you may come across it much later. There are many analogies I can make here. The entrepreneur that's looking for money and never, can seem to make the right amount of money or hold on to it because they're not looking for the right thing. Instead of visualizing how you help your customers and then the money comes, right? All these things that we can compare it to. I don't want to dwell on that because it'll make the video longer. Let's move forward, but you get the idea. If you focus on taking good images while you're out, don't worry about the style. Don't even let that enter your mind. Focus on taking good images. See what you like, what you're enjoying. Ooh, I'm really enjoying getting into the city because I have an afternoon job. I really enjoy getting into the city like at 6:30 in the morning when the light's coming up. There aren't too many cars and people. I love that feel. Maybe on a Saturday morning I like doing that, or Sunday morning because there's nobody around. I enjoy that so much. You just found your style in a way, right? You're finding yourself out there shooting empty streets with shadows when the sun's coming up. All of a sudden your style is developing. I like shooting people, congestion, people coming towards me, away from me, walking past me. There you're starting to find your own style. You weren't necessarily looking for it. You're out there doing what you love, what you enjoy, what you're kind of good at, right? So style will come in slowly and it will develop. Which is why I don't want you to stop at step 2. I want you to follow all the 5 steps because it kind of shapes the mind, right? When you oversaturate yourself with images and then you go out for 2 or 3 years and you shoot without thinking of those images anymore. And then you go back and you look at those images a couple of years later, it starts to come together. That's how the puzzle comes together. That's true in sports. That's true in martial arts. You learn things, you go out and you try them, and then you go back and you relearn them. The good instructors do that. They'll take you after years back to the basics and then they force the detail in. And it's like an aha moment. You realize, oh my gosh, when I learned it the first time, I really didn't learn it. Now that I've been using it for years, I go back and I learn it. Now I understand. Same thing with photography. Now I told you there's a second technique that isn't so process driven. This is kind of more my style. So you're gonna laugh here. Basically, you take the 5 steps I just gave you and you throw them in the garbage. And you shoot for 2, 3, 4 years and a style will surface on its own. Yeah, I actually said that. So Juan, why the heck did you waste our time telling us 5 tips for getting this done? Well, let me tell you why. Some people are very methodical. I have friends that don't operate well if they don't have steps, right? Especially some people are very, geared and minded for working under good leadership. And good leadership is about, treating your people right, of course, but giving people the right steps to get their job done, right? And my friends that are like this love to get that, some clear instruction of what needs to be done, and they go out and do it. For people that are very, very, step driven and very logical minded, this might help. You have the 5 steps. They're fun to do. There's nothing wrong with them. They're entertaining, and it's really going to help you hone in that style. But not everybody's like that. I tend to be a little more spontaneous, free-spirited, maybe a little lazy too. You might say that I'm sporadic. So keep in mind though, if you choose this second method, which is no method, it's like Bruce Lee used to say, right? Learn the style so you can forget the style. If you choose this method, it's not completely ad hoc. There is a lot of brain movement here that has to take place. You still have to know what you're doing. You still have to understand photography. And you have to be aware of all the different types of styles, right? So back to step 1 and 2. Take it all in and then learn photography well. Those are the first 2 steps. I said there was a danger if you stopped at step 2 because, it could be like looking for those keys, but that's only for people that are very methodical, because it's going to be like there's a 5-step program and they cut it off at 2, like they're missing those other steps to get the job done. For people that are a little more sporadic and crazy-minded like me, I probably don't want to be boxed into a procedure, although I understand it and I appreciate it, and I know that it works, by the way, because in a way, while I was sporadically finding my style for the different things that I do, like during wedding photography, when I was doing a lot of that, I was, finding my style, street photography, landscapes, even my artistic nudes. I do black and white nudes. I found a style, but it happened over years, right? Yeah, I want to tell you that it was ad hoc and it was very free-minded, but it wasn't entirely the truth. I did look at a lot of images. I did put a lot of images away in folders. These are physical folders in cabinets. I would shoot for a couple of years, and I didn't do it. I didn't plan it. I didn't say, ooh, I'm not going to look at it for 3 years. The reason I'm telling you this is because I learned it by myself. But the way I did it was I forgot where those pictures were, basically. Back to looking for stuff and not finding it. I forgot where they were, and I just went out and shot. I shot my black and white nudes, and I shot all kinds of things. And then I found all that stuff, and I went through it again, and I went, oh, you know what? My photography is leaning in this direction. Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize it. So I kind of did what I'm telling you don't have to do if you tend to be more sporadic. I tend to be more sporadic and, like I said, spontaneous. But I did have that procedure. I kind of used it and didn't use it, right? Because half the time I wasn't thinking about it. And I've shot for many, 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 many years. So it started happening on its own. So keep the 2 in mind. You can use it. You don't have to use it if you're kind of, spontaneous. If you like, lists and you like being very methodical, then you want to use this method. Or use a hybrid of it, right? Everybody's different. As a conclusion, we're here. All I want to say is don't dwell so much on what method you're using or not using. The point here is to have a good time while you're doing this, right? If you look too hard even for a method to use, it's like looking for those keys. You don't know how long it's going to take to find them, right? We learned that already. So enjoy yourselves. If this was useful, if it sparked a little bit of thought, please give me a like down here. Subscribe when you get a chance. Hit that little notification bell so that the other videos come into your inbox and your phone. I love you guys. I love spending time with you. I always appreciate your time. I hope this was useful. Leave comments and please share it. And I will see you in the next video. Until the next time, ciao for now.